everyone, Miss Carrie here from Miss Carrie's Creations. Today I have a Cricut card tutorial for you. I'm going to show you how to make this floral pocket fold card using a hexagon shape in Cricut Design Space. Let's go ahead and get started with the project. Here I am in Cricut Design Space. I'm going to start out by inserting a hexagon shape into my canvas. I'm going to change the size of this hexagon to the size I need for my card base. The width will equal 8 inches and the height will equal 6 inches. You are going to need to hit that little unlock icon in order to insert each one of those measurements. Now I'm just going to change the color of the shape real quick before I insert my score lines. The easiest way to create our score lines is by adding another shape. So I'm going to insert a square shape and change this into a rectangle. I'm going to go up to that size bar again, hit the little unlock icon, change the width to 4 and the height to 6 inches. So right now this rectangle is a basic cut. You can see that over there in the layers panel. I want to turn this into score lines for my card base. So I'm going to go up to Operation. I'm going to change the line type to Score, and then I'm going to center it on to that hexagon. So I'm going to select all, choose Align Center, and now I have 2 score lines on that card base that are going to fold over and create that fun little pocket. The next step is to add 2 little holes for our ribbon to thread through and tie this pocket shut. So I'm going to insert a circle shape. I'm going to change the size to 0.25 wide, so I have a 1/4 inch circle. And then I'm just going to kind of eyeball it on the left side of the card there. Let me zoom in here so you can see a little bit better. At this point, I'm just eyeballing it, and I'm using those crosshairs in the center of the circle to help me with placement. Once I've decided where that left circle is going to go, I'm going to duplicate it and move this other circle over to the right side of the card. I am also using the crosshairs once again just to get the distance away from the point of that triangle, and then I'm going to align both of these circles to top. Now that I have the circles and score line in place, I can go ahead and select all and attach all of these items together. Now we have a card base. This next step is going to cut out the 2 triangle pieces that go on the outside of the card and the inside background piece. First, I'm going to duplicate this background shape. I'm going to change the material color, and then I'm going to make this hexagon just a little bit smaller, and I'm going to change the height to 5.75. Over there in the layers panel, you can see that that square is a score shape. Just like we created for the background piece, those 2 lines on the side are score lines. I want to turn them back into cut lines so that I can cut my 2 triangles and my background piece. So I'm going to click on that square shape. I'm going to go up to Operation, and I'm going to choose the line type Basic Cut. This is going to turn the rectangle back into cut lines. So now we have the 3 cuts we need for our card base. All right, so now we're going to cut out our cardstock card base and our pattern paper cuts. Here we have our first mat, which is our pattern paper. It is going to be all basic cuts to give us 3 pieces. On our second mat, we have our piece of cardstock, and it is going to score and cut. So once you've chosen your machine and you've chosen your base material, you're going to need to make sure that you have the correct tools. If you are using a maker, you can use a scoring wheel or a scoring stylus. I'm going to be using my Air 2 today, so I need to make sure I load my scoring stylus to create those score lines. All right, so I'm going to go cut everything out, and then I'm going to show you how to assemble this pocket card. Here I have all of the items I cut out using my Cricut machine. I have that card background with the 2 score lines that we're going to go ahead and fold into the center. This is going to create that lovely little pocket for us. I also have those 3 patterned paper cuts that I cut out of some fern mix-in paper. The 2 triangles are going to go on the right and left side, and the rectangle is going to be flipped over and placed down here in the center of the card. I love Close to My Heart's patterned paper. Because the sides were different, I was able to cut out all 3 pieces from one piece of paper and create all of the parts I needed for my card. To add a little bit of aging and distressing on these pieces of paper, I'm going to grab my toffee ink pad and just rub that ink pad along all the edges of the pieces of paper. To give it just a light coloring, you can simply go along all of the edges. If you want a really aged or distressed look, you can rub more of the pad across the piece of paper. So you can see the 2 green pieces look a little bit different because I added more ink on one of the triangles than I did the other. I like the look of more ink, so I'm just going to add more to this second triangle. I'm also going to add ink to the card base. Both the front and the back are going to show on this card, so I'm just going to rub that toffee ink pad along all of the edges. Now that I've inked my cardstock and pieces of paper, I'm going to start adhering a few of these pieces down onto the card base. I'm going to start with that patterned paper that goes there in the center. I realized I forgot to add ink to it, so I need to do that real quick here before I adhere it down. This is just going to be centered in between those 2 score lines. Once I have added that centerpiece, then I'm going to glue down those 2 triangles. Now, it works best to use liquid adhesive. These are going to be on movable parts of the card, and they are going to have ribbon threaded through the holes. So you want these adhered really well on the front of the card. All right, now our card base is complete. Let's start building that little card that goes inside our pocket. I'm going to be using the Mothers Are the Best stamp set today for my flowers and my sentiment. I'm going to be stamping the flowers on this piece of French vanilla cardstock. On the inside of the card, I have this piece of floral mix-in paper. It's been cut at 3.5 by 5.5, and then I have a piece of French vanilla that's going to be layered on top of it that's just a little bit smaller. On my Versamat, I've laid down the foam insert from the stamping set, and I'm going to place down that French vanilla piece of cardstock so we can start stamping our leaves around the edge using fern ink. As I'm stamping the leaves, I'm going off the edge just a little bit to create a frame. Now, if you don't have a foam insert, you can flip over our Versamat. The back side is a solid foam surface, and it works perfectly for stamping. After creating that arc of leaves on the left, I'm going to create 3 little leaf shapes over on the right. This is going to help to frame my sentiment. After all of the solid leaves have been stamped in fern, I'm going to come back and create the outlines using espresso ink. This stamp set comes with a second set of leaves, and it fits over the solid leaves perfectly. I love how the lines help to emphasize the leaves on this background piece of cardstock. I'm sure you're wondering why I chose the colors I did for this card. I am creating it for the Craft Roulette Challenge, and the color requirements were green plus 3. Now, keep these rules in mind because I am going to end up making a few changes to my card later on because I forgot about the rules. All right, so now that this background piece has been created, we're going to start stamping the leaves and flowers for the inside of the card. One of the other challenge requirements was swinking, which means you swipe your ink pad across the cardstock. I'm going to be using Candy Apple and Sundance. I'm just going to swipe the Candy Apple ink pad onto that French vanilla to give me kind of a rustic background. I'm going to do the same thing with the Sundance ink. I'm just going to swipe it across the cardstock and just give it a touch of color. These are going to be the backgrounds for my flower images. I'm going to stamp the large flower and 2 small flowers in intense black ink. Swinking was a really fun technique to try, and it was a simple way to add color to these floral images. Now, after stamping the 2 flowers, I realized that I was also going to need some leaves. I've already swiped the fern ink across the French vanilla cardstock, and now I'm going to stamp the leaves in intense black ink. You can see just a touch of color peeking out inside those leaves. I love the way this looks. Alright, so off camera, I've cut out all my images and I heat embossed this sentiment on espresso cardstock. Now we can start putting all of the pieces together. I'm going to adhere this leaf background down onto that floral piece of patterned paper. Before I do that, I do want to add some ink around the edges. So I'm just going to grab my toffee ink pad and do just like I did on all of the other elements of the card. Just swipe that ink pad along all of the edges and corners. This is going to adhere right down in the center of that floral piece to create my little card insert. I'm also going to add ink to the edges of that floral patterned paper. This is going to keep the design cohesive and match all the other elements on the card. The sentiment I created is going to be placed over here on the right. It's going to be framed by all of those leaves I stamped earlier. It's going to be placed flat onto that card because the little flaps are going to fold over the top of it, and I don't want to create too much bulk that's going to prevent this from closing. Alright, so do you remember those rules I talked about? I hate rules in crafting. The rules for Craft Roulette were green plus 3, and guess what? Candy apple was color number 4. Plus, I'm not really a fan of how this flower looks, so I'm just going to go ahead and set it aside for another project and just use the 2 little flowers I shaded with Sundance ink. These flowers are going to be placed on the lower left side of that card insert. The flowers are not going to prevent the flaps from closing, so I am able to use both thin and thick 3D foam tape. I'm also going to be adding the little leaves around the flowers. Originally, I stamped 5 of them, but I've decided just to use 3, and I'll save the 2 leaves for another project later. I'm going to be adding these leaves around the flowers using some thin foam dots. This just gives it a little bit of added dimension behind those flowers without adding too much bulk to the card. Behind one of the leaves, I'm going to tuck a little wooden heart shape, but before I adhere it down, I want to make sure it's not going to prevent the flaps from closing, and it looks like it's going to work out just fine. So I'm going to grab my liquid adhesive, and I'm going to place this down onto the card. I also want to embellish the card with some gold embellishing thread. I'm just going to create 3 little loops with this embellishing thread, adjust the sizes, adhere the ends together using a glue dot, and then I'm going to go ahead and tuck these loops behind the flowers. Now you're going to see me fuss with this embellishing thread just a little bit. It didn't quite stick into the place where I wanted it to go originally, but that glue dot was just holding on. So I had to make a few adjustments, but once I had it where I wanted it to go, all I had to do was trim the ends, and it looks really nice on the inside of this pocket card. Now our insert is done. All we need to do is close up the 2 flaps on the pocket card. So I'm going to grab my little box of ribbon and choose a ribbon that's going to match this design. I need to make sure I pick a ribbon that is already in a shade that I have on this card because I don't want to break any Craft Roulette rules. I found this French vanilla one with some espresso design, and then I also found this toffee colored one, and I think I like the toffee colored one with the stitches much more. The ribbon is going to be threaded through the 2 holes we created, and you just need to tie it shut with a decorative knot. But of course, I couldn't just create a decorative knot. I needed to go and grab myself one of our adorable wooden buttons. After all, these buttons are just too much fun to play with, and I think it's the perfect element for the front of the card. I'm using my tweezers to help me thread the ribbon through the holes, and then I'm just going to tie a decorative knot to close up the front of this pocket card. The recipient of this card can choose to untie that ribbon and open up the flaps on the pocket card, or they can just pull the little card insert out and leave the pocket card as is with that cute little button on the front. All right, are you ready to take a look at our completed card we created using Cricut Design Space? This little pocket card was very simple to create. You simply pull out the insert, and as you can see, I did add some gold gems later on. I think that just adds to the card and it doesn't add too much bulk. I like how sweet this card is and how simple it slides in and out of the pocket. Now, we did follow the rules of Craft Roulette. I used green plus 3. All of the elements on this card were created with this Mother's Day stamp set. This is an exclusive stamp set that is only available for a limited time, so make sure you grab it before it's gone. I hope that you enjoyed learning how to create this card in Cricut Design Space and how to put it together using these ink colors, the swinking technique, and that beautiful Mother's Day stamp set. I hope that this pocket card project inspired you to try a few new things. I also hope that you visit the Craft Roulette Challenge. There's always some amazing talent each week, and you will be inspired to try something new. If you would like to see other card making tutorials, you can click on that collection icon above. I have also added a link to my most recent Cricut tutorial. Don't forget to click that subscribe button so that you are notified when I add new videos to this channel. I hope you have a wonderful week. I can't wait to see what you create.